When brilliant marketing analyst Sophia Chen spills champagne on her mysterious CEO Daniel Sterling at a corporate gala, she never imagines it will ignite a passionate romance that threatens to destroy them both. What starts as an accidental encounter becomes a dangerous game of love, power, and survival in the ruthless world of corporate Manhattan. Hello, beautiful souls. Tonight's story will take you on a journey where hearts are tested and destinies collide. The journey starts now. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Industries' 42nd floor, each droplet exploding like tiny grenades against the glass. Sophia Chen pressed her forehead against the cool surface, watching the city blur into watercolor streaks below. Her reflection stared back, hollow-eyed and exhausted. The emerald dress from Friday night's gala, now replaced by a simple black blazer that felt like armor against the whispers that had followed her all morning. Miss Chen. She spun around to find Patricia, Daniel's assistant, standing in the doorway of the conference room. The woman's expression was unreadable, professional as always, but Sophia caught something flickering behind her eyes. Pity, maybe, or judgment. Mr. Sterling will see you now. The walk down the executive hallway felt endless. Each step on the polished marble echoed like a countdown, and Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched the resignation letter hidden in her jacket pocket. She'd practiced her speech a dozen times in the mirror this morning, each word carefully chosen to maintain her dignity while erasing the memory of Saturday night from both their minds. Daniel's office door stood open, but he wasn't visible from the hallway. Sophia paused at the threshold, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for escape. "Come in. Close the door." His voice was different than she remembered, colder, more controlled. The warmth that had drawn her in like a moth to flame was nowhere to be found. She stepped inside, and her breath caught. Daniel stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the wall of windows that showcased Manhattan's skyline. His shoulders were rigid beneath his tailored suit jacket, and when he finally turned to face her, his steel blue eyes held none of the tenderness she had seen in the dim light of his hotel suite. "Sit down, Miss Chen." The formal address hit her like a slap. She remained standing, her chin lifted in defiance, even as her world crumbled around her. "I'd rather stand." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at her refusal to be intimidated. He moved to his desk, his movements precise and calculated, like a predator circling its prey. "I've been thinking about our conversation on Saturday night." Heat flooded her cheeks. "Mr. Sterling, I came here too about your marketing proposals," he continued, cutting her off smoothly. "Your insights into consumer behavior patterns. Very impressive work." She stared at him, confusion replacing the shame that had been eating her alive for the past 3 days. This wasn't the conversation she had expected. This clinical dissection of her professional contributions felt somehow worse than outright rejection. "I don't understand." Daniel picked up a file from his desk, his fingers drumming against the manila surface in a rhythm that seemed to match the frantic beating of her heart. "I'm promoting you. Head of Strategic Marketing. You'll report directly to me." The words hit her like physical blows. She took an involuntary step backward, her hand flying to her throat. "What? Your salary will triple. Corner office on this floor. Full benefits package." His voice was steady, businesslike, as if he were discussing quarterly projections instead of turning her life upside down. "You start Monday, I can't." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Mr. Sterling, I can't work for you." "Not after what, Miss Chen?" The question hung in the air between them like a loaded gun. His eyes never left her face, searching for something she couldn't identify. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "Nothing," she whispered finally. Nothing happened. Something dangerous flashed in his expression. He moved around the desk with fluid grace, cute step bringing him closer until she could smell his cologne, could see the tiny scar above his left eyebrow that she had traced with her fingertips in the darkness. "Nothing?" His voice was barely above a whisper now, but it carried more weight than a shout. "Look me in the eye and tell me nothing happened," she tried. God, she tried to meet his gaze and deliver the lie that would set them both free. But when she looked up, she saw past the cold executive mask to the man underneath. The man who had held her like she was something precious, who had whispered her name like a prayer in the dark. Sophia. Her name on his lips was soft, vulnerable, nothing like the formal address he had used moments before. "What are we doing?" Before she could answer, the office door burst open. A woman in an expensive red dress swept in like a hurricane, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled despite the storm raging outside. She was beautiful in the way that money could buy, all sharp edges and calculated perfection. "Darling, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Daniel stepped away from Sophia so quickly she nearly stumbled. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by something that looked like panic. "Rebecca, I thought you were in the Hamptons." Rebecca's smile was predatory as her gaze swept over Sophia, taking in every detail with the precision of a surgeon. "Change of plans. I wanted to surprise my fiancé." The word hit Sophia like a physical blow. Fiancé, the room tilted sideways, and she gripped the edge of Daniel's desk to keep from falling. "Miss Chen," Rebecca continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "isn't it? I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Rebecca Hartwell." Daniel's fiancé, the blood drained from Sophia's face as Rebecca's words echoed in the cavernous office. Fiancé. The word ricocheted through her mind like a bullet, destroying every tender memory of Saturday night with surgical precision. Daniel's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "Rebecca, we need to discuss—" "Oh, there's nothing to discuss, darling." Rebecca glided forward, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown to execution. She slipped her arm through Daniel's with practiced ease, marking her territory with the subtle violence of a socialite's smile. "I've already spoken to Daddy about moving the wedding up. June seems so far away, don't you think?" Sophia watched the exchange like a spectator at her own funeral. The man who had whispered promises against her skin stood rigid as stone, his face a mask of controlled fury. But he didn't pull away from Rebecca's touch. He didn't deny her claim. "Miss Chen." Rebecca's attention turned back to Sophia with laser focus. "You look positively pale. Are you feeling all right?" The concern in her voice was manufactured, each syllable calculated for maximum damage. Sophia straightened her spine, calling on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. "Congratulations," she managed, her voice surprisingly steady. "You make a beautiful couple." Something flickered behind Daniel's eyes. Pain, maybe? Or regret. But it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Now then," Rebecca continued, her grip tightening possessively on Daniel's arm. "What were you two discussing? It looked terribly intense when I walked in." "Miss Chen was just accepting a promotion," Daniel said, his voice carefully neutral. "Head of Strategic Marketing." Rebecca's eyebrows rose, and her smile sharpened. "How wonderful. Such rapid advancement. You must have made quite an impression." The words were innocent enough, but the venom beneath them was unmistakable. Sophia felt the walls of the office closing in around her, the air growing thick and poisonous. "Actually," she heard herself say, "I've decided to decline the position." Daniel's head snapped toward her, his composure cracking for just an instant. "Miss Chen, it's a generous offer, Mr. Sterling, but I've accepted a position elsewhere." The lie rolled off her tongue with surprising ease. "I'll be submitting my resignation this afternoon." Rebecca's smile widened, genuine now in its satisfaction. "What a shame. But I'm sure you'll find opportunities better suited to your qualifications." The dismissal was clear, brutal in its efficiency. Sophia nodded once, her movements mechanical as she turned toward the door. She made it halfway across the office before Daniel's voice stopped her. "Sophia." "Wait." She froze, her hand on the door handle. Behind her, she heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath, felt the sudden tension crackling through the air like electricity before a storm. "Miss Chen," he corrected himself, but the damage was already done. "We're not finished discussing your transition." She didn't turn around. Couldn't. If she looked at him now, she would shatter into 1,000 pieces right there on his pristine marble floor. "Yes, we are." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. 3 hours later, Sophia sat in O'Malley's pub, a dive bar 6 blocks from Sterling Industries, where the whiskey was cheap and the bartender minded his own business. Rain streaked the grimy windows, and the neon beer signs cast everything in sickly shades of red and blue. She stared at her reflection in the amber liquid. Seeing a stranger with hollow eyes and trembling hands, the resignation letter lay crumpled on the bar beside her phone, which had been buzzing incessantly with calls from an unknown number. You gonna drink that or just stare at it all night? The bartender was a grizzled man in his 60s, with kind eyes and hands that had seen too much hard work. His name tag read, "Jimmy, still deciding," she muttered. "Rough day?" She laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You could say that." Her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. She grabbed it with more force than necessary, ready to silence it permanently. When she saw the text message preview, "It's not what you think. Meet me, please." Her finger hovered over the delete button, but something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe it was the desperate hope that refused to die despite everything she had witnessed. She opened the message. Pier 15. 1 hour. "I can explain everything. Bad news?" Jimmy asked, refilling her glass without being asked. "The worst kind," she replied. But she was already standing, throwing a 20 on the bar. The kind that gives you hope when you should know better. The rain had softened to a gentle mist by the time she reached the pier. The East River stretched out before her like black glass, reflecting the city lights in fractured patterns. Daniel stood at the railing, his expensive suit soaked through. His dark hair plastered to his skull, he looked like a man drowning on dry land. "You came," he said without turning around. "I shouldn't have." "No, you shouldn't have." He finally faced her, and she saw that his careful composure had completely crumbled. His eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. "God, Sophia, I never meant for you to find out like that." "Find out what? That you're engaged? That Saturday night meant nothing to you?" Her voice cracked on the last words, betraying the pain she was trying so hard to hide. It meant everything. The words came out like a confession, torn from his soul. "That's the problem." She took a step back, shaking her head. Don't you dare try to make this about us. When you have a fiancé waiting at home, Rebecca isn't my fiancé." The words hung between them like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. "Not really. It's an arrangement business. Our families. The companies." He ran his hands through his wet hair, leaving it standing in wild spikes. "Fuck, this sounds insane even to me. Then why didn't you tell her the truth?" "Why didn't you? Because I can't." The anguish in his voice stopped her cold. "You don't understand, Sophia. Rebecca's father owns 40% of Sterling Industries. If I break the engagement, he'll destroy everything my father built. Every employee, every pension, every family that depends on this company will suffer because I was selfish enough to want something real." The words hit her like physical blows. She saw the trap he was in, the impossible choice between duty and desire, and her heart broke for both of them. "So what are you saying? That we pretend Saturday night never happened? That we go back to being strangers?" He moved toward her, his eyes blazing with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying that one night with you was worth more than 5 years of this prison I've built around myself. And I'm saying that if you walk away now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." The confession shattered her remaining defenses. She reached for him, but he stepped back, holding up his hands to stop her. "But I'm also saying that loving me will destroy you. Rebecca already suspects something, and she won't hesitate to end your career, your reputation, everything you've worked for. She has that power, and she'll use it." Thunder rolled across the water. Lightning split the sky, illuminating them both in stark black and white. In that moment, Sophia saw their future laid out before them like a map of a war zone. Every path led to destruction. "So what do we do?" she whispered. Daniel's smile was heartbroken, beautiful in its devastation. "We make a choice that will haunt us both." Behind them, footsteps echoed on the wet pier. They turned to see Rebecca approaching through the mist, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. Her red dress was a slash of color against the gray night, and her smile was triumphant. "How romantic," she called out, her voice carrying across the water. A clandestine meeting in the rain. How very predictable. The pier fell silent except for the gentle lapping of water against the pilings and the soft click of Rebecca's heels on wet wood. The two men flanking her moved with the fluid precision of predators, their hands resting casually inside their jackets in a way that made Sophia's blood run cold. Rebecca. Daniel's voice was carefully controlled, but Sophia could see the tension coiled in his shoulders like a spring ready to snap. This isn't what it looks like. Rebecca laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Oh, darling, it's exactly what it looks like. Did you really think I wouldn't have you followed? That I'd believe your little performance this afternoon was genuine? She stopped just close enough to force intimacy while maintaining the advantage of her backup. In the harsh light of the street lamps, her beauty looked artificial. Predatory. You always were too sentimental for your own good, Daniel. Just like your father. Her voice carried a casual cruelty that made Sophia flinch. At least he had the sense to keep his affairs discreet. My father never. Your father was a romantic fool who nearly lost everything chasing secretaries and socialites. Rebecca's smile widened. Lucky for him, my father was there to clean up his messes, just like I'm here to clean up yours. Sophia felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. What are you talking about? Rebecca's attention shifted to her with the focus of a snake selecting its prey. Oh, you sweet, naive little thing. Did you really think you were special? That you were the first bright young thing to catch Daniel's eye? Rebecca, stop. Daniel's voice carried a warning that vibrated with barely contained violence. Why? She deserves to know the truth. Rebecca pulled out her phone, swiping through photos with theatrical precision. Sarah Martinez from accounting 2 years ago? Lovely girl, brilliant mind, just like you. She had such dreams of changing the world. She held up the phone, displaying a photo of a young woman with kind eyes and a radiant smile. Shame about that car accident. The blood drained from Sophia's face. What happened to her? Nothing that won't happen to you if you continue this little romance. Rebecca's voice was conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. Sarah was stubborn too. Thought love would conquer all. She learned differently. Daniel lunged forward, but one of the men stepped smoothly into his path, a gun appearing in his hand with practiced ease. The weapon gleamed dully in the lamplight, its message unmistakable. Now, darling. Violence is so beneath you. Rebecca's tone was mocking, delighted by his helplessness. Besides, Miss Chen needs to understand the stakes before she makes her final decision. Sophia's mind raced, fragments of overheard conversations and office gossip suddenly clicking into place. Sarah Martinez had been found in her car at the bottom of the Hudson. Ruled an accident, despite witness reports of another vehicle leaving the scene. You're insane, she whispered. I'm practical, Rebecca corrected. Sterling Industries is mine by right, and I won't let some nobody with starry eyes and middle-class morals destroy what my family has built. She stepped closer to Sophia. Close enough that her perfume mixed with the salt air and rain, but I'm not unreasonable. Walk away now, disappear quietly, and you can keep your life. Your boring, ordinary life in whatever small town you crawl back to, and if I don't? Rebecca's smile was all teeth. Then you'll learn why Daniel's father was so grateful for my family's protection. Accidents happen so easily in this city. Muggings gone wrong, gas leaks, falls from high places. She shrugged delicately. The possibilities are endless. Thunder cracked overhead, and the rain began to fall harder, turning the pier slick and treacherous. Sophia looked at Daniel, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. They were trapped, cornered by a woman who held all the power and none of the conscience. I need time to think, Sophia said finally. Of course you do. Rebecca's voice was magnanimous in victory. 24 hours should be sufficient. After that, well, she gestured to the dark water beyond the pier. The river has such a hunger for secrets. She turned to leave, then paused as if struck by an afterthought. Oh, and Daniel. If you try to warn her, if you make any attempt to interfere with her decision, she dies tonight. My patience with your romantic inclinations has reached its limit. The men melted back into the shadows as silently as they had appeared, leaving Daniel and Sophia alone on the pier with nothing but the weight of an impossible choice. Sophia, you have to run. Daniel's voice was urgent, desperate. Tonight, don't go home, don't pack, just disappear. I can't. The words surprised them both. I won't let her win. Won't let her turn me into another Sarah Martinez. She'll kill you. His hands found her shoulders, gripping tight enough to leave bruises. Do you understand that? This isn't some corporate power play. She's done this before, then we stop her. Daniel's laugh was hollow, bitter. How? She has evidence of our affair? Photos, recordings, probably. She has men with guns and connections in every level of government and law enforcement. What do we have? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her mind working through possibilities and discarding them one by one. Then something shifted in her expression, a hardness settling over her features like armor. We have something she doesn't expect, she said finally. What? A woman with nothing left to lose. She pulled away from his grip, her movements suddenly purposeful. Rebecca made one mistake tonight. She told us her secret. She admitted to murder. We have no proof. No one would believe us over her. Then we get proof. Sophia's eyes blazed with dangerous determination. You said she's done this before? There have to be others' patterns. Evidence, she thinks, is buried deep enough to stay hidden. Daniel stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You're talking about going after the most powerful woman in New York with nothing but suspicion and a death wish. I'm talking about fighting back. She stepped closer, rain streaming down her face like tears. The question is, are you with me, or are you going to let her win? For a moment, he looked every inch the corporate executive, calculating risks and probabilities with the cold logic that had built his empire. Then something shifted, the careful facade cracking to reveal the man underneath. If we do this, there's no going back. She'll come after both of us with everything she has. She's already coming after us. Sophia reached out, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. At least this way we go down fighting. Daniel caught her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where his heart hammered against his ribs. 24 hours isn't enough time. Then we better get started. She pulled away, already moving toward the shore. I know someone who might help us. Someone Rebecca doesn't know about. Sophia, wait. His voice stopped her at the edge of the pier. If this goes wrong, if we don't make it, we will. Her voice carried a certainty she didn't feel. We have to. As she disappeared into the maze of city streets, Daniel remained on the pier, watching the water swallow the reflection of the lights. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a message that made his blood freeze. She's more clever than I expected. How delicious. The game begins now. The abandoned warehouse in Queens reeked of rust and broken dreams. Water dripped steadily from the corroded ceiling, its drop echoing through the cavernous space like a metronome counting down to disaster. Sophia checked her watch again. 2:47 a.m. Daniel was late. Marcus Rivera emerged from the shadows, his weathered face grave in the harsh light of the single bulb hanging overhead. The former NYPD detective had been her father's partner years ago, before corruption scandals and a crisis of conscience drove him into private investigation. He was one of the few people in the city who couldn't be bought. You sure about this, kiddo? His voice carried the weight of a man who had seen too much darkness. What you're asking me to do, it's not just dangerous. It's suicide. Sophia's fingers tightened around the flash drive in her pocket. 12 hours of digging through Sterling Industries' buried files had yielded a treasure trove of evidence. Financial irregularities, suspicious accidents, a pattern of women who had gotten too close to Daniel and then simply vanished from their lives without explanation. Sarah Martinez wasn't the first, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. There were 3 others over the past 5 years. All young, all brilliant, all connected to Daniel in some way. Marcus nodded grimly. And all ruled accidental deaths or disappearances. Clean as a whistle, no evidence of foul play. Because Rebecca's father owns half. city council, and his judges in his pocket. Sophia pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the makeshift table between them. But this time, she made a mistake. The image showed Rebecca entering a nondescript building in Midtown, followed by the same two men from the pier. The timestamp read 3 days after Sarah Martinez's death. That's a safe house, Marcus confirmed. Studying the photo, known associates of the Torino crime family use it for wet work. If we can get inside, find evidence linking her to the murders, we can bring down her entire operation. Sophia's voice carried a fierce satisfaction. End this once and for all. The sound of footsteps on concrete made them both freeze. Daniel appeared at the warehouse entrance, his expensive suit replaced by dark jeans and a leather jacket that made him look like a stranger. But it was the expression on his face that stopped Sophia's heart. He looked like a man walking to his own. Execution, Daniel. Thank God. She moved toward him, relief flooding through her system. I was starting to think, I'm sorry, Sophia. The words hit her like physical blows. Behind Daniel, figures emerged from the shadows. Rebecca stepped into the light, wearing a black coat that made her look like a beautiful harbinger of death. Her smile was triumphant, victorious. I told you he was weak, she said conversationally. Too sentimental for his own good. Marcus had his gun out before Sophia could blink. But more men appeared from hidden positions throughout the warehouse. The red dots of laser sights danced across his chest like deadly fireflies. I wouldn't, Rebecca advised pleasantly. Unless you want this to become even messier than it already is. Sophia stared at Daniel, searching his face for any sign that this was a trick, a desperate gambit to save them both. But his eyes held only guilt and a pain so profound it seemed to radiate from him like heat from a flame. The word came out as barely a whisper. Daniel's composure cracked, revealing the agony beneath. Because she has my sister. The revelation hit Sophia like a sledgehammer. She had researched every aspect of Daniel's life, but had found no mention of siblings. His family history showed only parents, both deceased. Alina, he continued, his voice breaking on the name, my half-sister. She's been in a private care facility in Switzerland for the past 10 years. Brain injury from a riding accident, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Rebecca's been paying for her care, using it as leverage. If I don't comply, if I don't marry her and sign over the company, the poor girl will have such a terrible accident, Rebecca finished sweetly. Facility fires are so tragic. All those helpless patients, no way to escape. Sophia felt the last of her hope crumble. She understood now why Daniel had never been able to break free, why he had endured years of manipulation and control. The trap had been perfect, inescapable. But that's not why you called me tonight, is it, Daniel? Rebecca's voice carried a silky menace. You could have simply refused to meet Miss Chen. Could have let her run off into the night and disappear. Daniel's jaw worked silently for a moment before he forced out the words. She offered me a deal. Full immunity, protection for Alina, if I helped bring Sophia in. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Sophia doubled over as if she had been shot, the pain radiating through her chest in waves. You see, my dear, Rebecca continued, moving closer with predatory grace. Daniel finally learned what his father never did. That love is a luxury he can't afford. That some sacrifices are necessary for the greater good. Marcus kept his gun trained on Rebecca despite the hopeless odds. Let the girl go. You want Sterling Industries? Take it. But she's no threat to you now. Rebecca laughed, the sound echoing off the warehouse walls like breaking glass. Oh, but she is. She's seen too much, knows too much. And more importantly, she represents everything I despise. The naive belief that good can triumph over power, that love can conquer all. She stopped directly in front of Sophia, close enough that her perfume mixed with the industrial stench of the warehouse. Your little investigation has been quite thorough. Banks, accounts, witness statements, even photos of my associates. Impressive work for someone so out of her depth. Sophia forced herself to straighten, to meet Rebecca's eyes, despite the devastation crushing her from within. It won't matter. Even if you kill me, the evidence is already out there. Insurance policies, dead man switches. Are they? Rebecca's smile widened. Daniel, show her. With movements that seemed to cost him everything, Daniel pulled out his phone and played a video. The screen showed Marcus's office being ransacked by men in masks, files scattered, computers destroyed. Then the camera panned to show Marcus's daughter, bound and gagged in the corner. Maria. Marcus's gun wavered, his face going white. You touch her and you'll what? You're outnumbered 10-1. Your daughter's life hangs in the balance. Rebecca's voice was matter-of-fact, as if they were discussing the weather. Put down your weapon, detective. Let's end this with some dignity. The gun clattered to the concrete floor with a sound like finality itself. Better, Rebecca gestured. And one of her men kicked the weapon away into the shadows. Now then, Miss Chen. Let's discuss your final contribution to this little drama. She pulled out a tablet, swiping to reveal a document on the screen. A confession already typed and ready for your signature. You'll admit to industrial espionage, to stealing trade secrets and selling them to competitors. Your suicide note will express remorse for your actions and your inability to live with the shame. Sophia read the words with growing horror. It was perfect, damning, the kind of scandal that would destroy not just her reputation, but her father's business, her family's future. Sign it, Rebecca commanded, producing an expensive pen from her coat pocket. And I'll make sure your death is quick, merciful. Refuse. Sophia's heartbeat in her ears. She looked at Daniel one last time, seeing her own doom reflected in his tortured expression. I'm sorry, he whispered again, the words carrying the weight of his destroyed soul. Sophia took the pen, her hand trembling as she held it over the document. In that moment, she made a choice that would define her final moments. Instead of signing her name, she drove the pen deep into the tablet's screen, the device sparking and dying in a shower of electric failure. If I'm going to die, she said, her voice carrying a strength she didn't know she possessed, I'm going to do it on my own terms. Rebecca's mask of control finally slipped, revealing the rage beneath. Kill them. Kill them both. Make it hurt. The warehouse erupted into chaos as Rebecca's men raised their weapons, but the expected gunfire never came. Instead, the building filled with the thunder of boots on concrete and the sharp crack of flashbang grenades. Emergency lights blazed to life, turning the dingy space into a stage of stark shadows and blinding illumination. FBI, everyone on the ground. Agents in tactical gear poured through every entrance, their weapons trained on Rebecca's men with military precision. The red laser dots that had threatened Sophia and Marcus now painted targets on their captors instead. Rebecca spun around in fury, her perfect composure finally shattered completely. This is impossible. I own half the federal judges in the district, not all of them. Agent Sarah Walsh stepped through the tactical team, her badge gleaming in the harsh light. She was younger than Sophia had expected, with steel-gray eyes that had seen too much corruption to ever be bought. And definitely not the ones who signed the warrants for this operation, Sophia stared in shock as Rebecca's men dropped their weapons and submitted to arrest. The woman who had seemed untouchable moments before now looked small, ordinary, stripped of the power that had made her terrifying. How? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Agent Walsh smiled grimly. Because Miss Chen was never working alone. She reached out to the Bureau 3 days ago with evidence of your operation. We've been building a case against your family for years, waiting for someone brave enough to come forward. The pieces clicked into place in Sophia's mind. The insurance policies Rebecca had mentioned, the evidence she thought was destroyed. It had never been about revenge or justice. It had been about survival. It's about ensuring that the truth would come out even if she didn't live to tell it. The confession video. The financial records, the photos, Agent Walsh continued, gesturing to the tactical team as they secured the scene. We have everything, Ms. Hartwell, including recorded admissions of multiple murders. Rebecca's gaze snapped to Daniel, who stood frozen in the center of the chaos like a man caught between worlds. You knew. You knew about this. Daniel's response was barely audible. No, I thought I was saving Alina. I thought I was choosing the lesser evil. Elena Sterling died 3 years ago. Agent Walsh's words cut through the warehouse like a blade. Pneumonia. Calls to maintain the illusion. The revelation hit Daniel like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face draining of all color. That's impossible. I spoke to her last week. You spoke to an actress, Agent Walsh corrected gently. Miss Hartwell hired someone who looked similar, coached her on Elena's mannerisms. The video calls were always carefully staged, short duration, designed to maintain the illusion of your sister's continued existence. Daniel's knees buckled, and he collapsed against the concrete pillar behind him. Years of manipulation, of choices made in desperation to save someone who was already gone. The weight of it crushed him visibly. Rebecca's laughter filled the warehouse, high and sharp with madness. Oh, this is perfect. Even now, even when you've lost everything, there's still the pathetic little boy who couldn't save his sister the first time. Enough. Sophia's voice cut through the chaos with surprising authority. She stepped forward, past the FBI agents, past the weapons and the danger, until she stood directly in front of Rebecca. It's over. Your empire, your power, your ability to hurt innocent people, it ends here. Rebecca's eyes blazed with hatred so pure it seemed to radiate heat. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've unleashed. My family has connections you can't imagine. Resources that had, Agent Walsh interrupted smoothly. Past tense. Your father was arrested in his Hamptons estate 20 minutes ago. Your brother in Switzerland. Your uncle in Monaco. This operation has been coordinated across 3 continents. Ms. Hartwell. The Hartwell crime syndicate is finished. The fight went out of Rebecca all at once, leaving her looking suddenly fragile in her expensive black coat. She was handcuffed with the same efficiency as her subordinates, but her eyes never left Sophia's face. This isn't justice, she hissed, as the agents led her toward the exit. This is just another kind of power play. You'll see. In the end, you'll become just like me. No, Sophia replied quietly. I won't, because unlike you, I know the difference between strength and cruelty. As Rebecca disappeared into the night, surrounded by federal agents, the warehouse fell quiet except for the distant sound of sirens and the soft conversation of investigators processing the scene. Marcus holstered his recovered weapon, his weathered face showing relief mixed with exhaustion. My daughter? Safe, Agent Walsh assured him. We had her under protection before we moved on this location. She's at a federal safe house, asking for her dad. The old detective nodded, emotion threatening to overwhelm his professional composure. Thank you. Both of you. He looked at Sophia with something approaching. Your father would be proud, kiddo. You've got his courage and your mother's heart. Sophia felt tears she'd been holding back for days finally spill over. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and emotionally raw. She turned to find Daniel watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I need to know, he said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and grief. When you came to me 3 days ago when you said you wanted to fight back, did you already know about the FBI investigation? The question hung between them like a bridge over an abyss. Sophia could lie, could spare him the knowledge of how deeply she had manipulated their final confrontation. But she had promised herself that whatever happened, she would face it with honesty. Yes, she admitted quietly. I reached out to them after our meeting on the pier. When I realized Rebecca would never stop, that she would keep hurting people to maintain her control. She took a breath, steadying herself. But Daniel, everything else was real. My feelings for you, the connection we had, the way you made me feel like I could be more than I ever imagined, that was never part of any plan. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing the layers of deception and truth that had defined their relationship. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She's really gone? Alina, 3 years ago, Agent Walsh confirmed gently. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. I know this is difficult. But you need to understand that everything Ms. Hartwell told you about your sister's condition, her continued need for care, it was all fabricated to control you. The sound that escaped Daniel's throat was barely human, a raw expression of grief to long suppressed. Sophia moved toward him instinctively, but he held up a hand to stop her. "I need time," he said, his voice breaking, "to process this, to figure out who I am without her threats, without the constant fear." He looked at Sophia with eyes full of regret and something that might have been hope. "I need to learn how to be the man you thought I could be instead of the coward I've been." Sophia nodded, understanding flooding through her despite the pain of his words. "No. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, you'll know where to find me." Agent Walsh approached them both with the careful professionalism someone used to dealing with trauma. "Mr. Sterling, we'll need you to testify in the federal case against the Hartwell organization. Your cooperation will be essential to ensuring convictions." "Whatever you need," Daniel replied without hesitation. "I want to make sure they can never hurt anyone else." As the FBI team finished securing the warehouse and preparing to leave, Sophia found herself standing alone in the space where her life had nearly ended. The building was quiet now, peaceful even, as if the violence and terror had been cleansed by justice. Marcus approached her one final time, his expression serious. "What will you do now, kiddo?" "Sterling Industries will need new leadership, and from what I hear, Daniel's planning to restructure the entire company." Sophia considered the question, thinking about the future that stretched ahead of her like an unwritten story. "I think I'll start my own firm. Marketing consulting for companies that actually want to make the world better instead of just making money." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Maybe help some small businesses compete with the corporate giants." "Sounds like something your parents would approve of," Marcus said with gruff affection, as they walked out of the warehouse together. Sophia turned back one final time. In 6 months, Daniel would call her, not as a CEO seeking her professional services, but as a man who had spent half a year learning to live without fear. They would meet for coffee in a small cafe in Brooklyn. Far from the corporate towers and power games of Manhattan, he would tell her about the therapy, about learning to grieve his sister properly, about transforming Sterling Industries into the kind of company that honored workers instead of exploiting them. She would tell him about her new business, about the satisfaction of helping entrepreneurs achieve their dreams without sacrificing their souls, and slowly, carefully, they would begin to build something real. Not the desperate passion of two people trapped in impossible circumstances, but the steady, honest love of two individuals who had learned the difference between need and choice. Rebecca Hartwell would spend the rest of her life in federal prison, her empire of fear reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. The families of her victims would finally have justice, and the city would be a little safer for the removal of her poison. But all of that was still in the future. Tonight, Sophia Chen walked out of the warehouse, a survivor, a woman who had faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. The rain had stopped. The sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. She had work to do, a life to rebuild, and dreams to pursue. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the future looked bright. The end.